This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. And welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and this is episode number 284 of the podcast. And if this is your first time listening in, glad you've joined us. Hope you'll come back for more and take time to follow us. And if you have come back for more, glad you're with me again, and I hope you'll also follow us if you haven't done so already. So the guest I have on this particular episode is no stranger to this podcast, and if you've been listening for a while, you might remember that last year about this time, my dear friend Whitney Owens did a podcast takeover for me. And so she is back on as my guest for this particular episode. And we're talking about just a lot of things in general, what it means to have a faith-based practice, but also we talk about the summit that she is putting on that's coming up in October. And she just talks a little bit about that and also some about the process of putting summits and retreats together and why that's helpful and why that's important to us in our profession. But anyway, we'll get to Whitney here, my conversation with Whitney here in a moment. But before we do that, one of the things that I've been working on fairly diligently here lately is putting together a workshop for folks that are interested in podcasting. You've heard me talk about this before earlier in the year and realized that I needed to change the format a bit around that whole topic. But what I've done is put together a podcasting workshop that's a free workshop that is going to be delivered to your inbox. And so it's going to be about 6 mini lessons that you will get by email of me just talking about the steps you need to take to start a podcast. And along with that, there'll be an opportunity to join a masterclass where we really dive in deep on the topic of starting a podcast and getting support around that and how to do all the stuff. But anyway, I would invite you to go over and sign up for the free workshop. And you can get to that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/podcast workshop. And there'll be links here in the show notes and the show summary for that for you to get to it easily. But so I'm just really excited about this particular offering this to people. And also just want to, one of the things that I've really been excited about this past year and this year as well is just the community that I've been able to build, and people are reaching out to me just around the podcast, this podcast in particular, but also my other podcasts, the Kindness and Compassion podcast, which are part of the Psychcraft network. And I started the network this last year, and we're up to 10 different podcasts in the network at this, as I'm recording this. There'll probably be a few more to join here shortly, but you can check it out by going to psychcraftnetwork.com. And I would invite you to go over there and check out all the other great podcasts that are part of this network. And so, again, real quickly before we get to my conversation with Whitney, I'd love for you to hear from one of the members of the Psychcraft network, along with some information from the sponsor of our podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hey there, I'm Chris McDonald, and if you don't know me yet, I'm host of the Holistic Counseling Podcast, which is for therapists who want to deepen their knowledge of holistic modalities and build their practice with confidence. The Holistic Counseling Podcast is proudly part of the Sightcraft Podcast Network, a network of podcasts focused on helping people live more meaningful and productive lives. Join me each week as we explore the best practices for integrating holistic approaches into therapy and delve into the many benefits. Whether you're looking for new techniques or seeking to deepen your own personal journey towards wellness, this podcast is the perfect companion for your holistic path. If you haven't listened yet, you can find it over at holisticcounselingpodcast.com and discover other resources, including products, books, and other trainings to help support you in your holistic journey.
One of the keys to a successful private practice is having the right systems and processes in place to make things run as smoothly as possible. With a system like TherapyNotes, you'll have more time to spend with what matters most, your clients. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Your clinical records will be secure with less paperwork, which means you can give a much better quality of care. It's the EHR that Gordon uses in his practice. Be sure to check them out today by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and be sure to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free.
Well, hello, folks, and welcome again to the podcast. And you're going to get to hear a familiar voice here. Hey, Whitney, glad you're back.
Hey, Gordon.
It's so good to have Whitney Owens back. And for those of you that have been longtime listeners, you probably remember that Whitney took over this podcast, but now she's got her own podcast, the Wise Practice Podcast, and doing a lot of great stuff. So Whitney, tell folks a little bit about yourself for maybe those that might not know about you, although I can't imagine that anybody doesn't know about you.
And that's funny because I feel the same way about you, Gordon. Yes. So I'm Whitney. I am located in Savannah, Georgia, right on the coast. I have a group practice. I think we have 15 therapists. Sometimes I forget, right?
Yeah.
Private pay practice, but I also have an ability to bring faith to the picture. I bring faith into my clinical work with clients. It's a part of how I run my business. And honestly, years ago when I was growing my group practice, I was like looking for a consultant that had a faith-based twist to the way that they did business consulting. And I was struggling to find that. And then I felt the tug on my heart. Hey, why don't you do this? And I ran away from it for a long time, but now I embraced it and I love it. So it is Whitney Owens Consulting, but a lot of the things that I do are called Wise Practice because, that sounds Christian. So it's the Wise Practice Podcast, a Wise Practice Summit, Wise Practice Membership Community. So those are some of the things that I work on.
Right. Yeah. And, one of the things that I appreciate most about Whitney is the fact that she brings this whole faith component. And we've had lots of conversations about this around what it means to have a faith-based practice versus, one that's not, or what that means. I think people typically kind of think of, well, if it's faith-based, it's Christian, but that's not always the case. And the other thing too is that I think one of the things that I know Whitney and I have talked about is being able to put that out there to people to where they don't feel like they are going to be, I guess the word's proselytize. I always have proselytize or somebody trying to convert them or any of that sort of thing. And I think that most of us that do have faith-based or faith-informed practices don't really feel that that's any part of it. It's just meeting people where they are and then maybe inserting some of our Christian values in with what we talk with people about, but it's certainly not there to convert.
Totally agree. I mean, unfortunately, there are people who do have an agenda in this world. I mean, we have agendas outside of faith in what we do, and we have to be really cognizant of that. But I agree with you, Gordon. Like for me, having a faith-based practice is just about meeting clients where they're at and bringing a faith component to the table when they are requesting that and doing it appropriately within the counseling field.
Right, right. And it's probably a very it's a specific niche. And I know for Whitney and I both being in the South, as I like to say, the Bible Belt, or I always say I'm at the belt buckle of the Bible Belt where I am, because it's most of the people in my area, my community are pretty both politically and religiously conservative. I am not. I'm the outlier in my community, but that's something that they're looking for, and I accommodate those people in my practice, and it's actually, I think for some people that's what they want. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, didn't mean to go far down that rabbit trail, but one of the things Whitney has got coming up is a conference. And I guess two things. We want to really make you aware of the conference, particularly I think her conference is going to be a great fit, obviously, for people in faith-based practices, but also folks that maybe not in that category, because she's got some world-class speakers and keynoters going to be there for the conference. But before we get to talking about the conference specifically, Whitney has done this brilliant thing of starting retreats and doing summits and that sort of thing, and has really been part of who she is as a consultant. So how did you land on all of that?
Good question. So I like to say, with at least when it comes to hosting conferences, it's a little bit like planning a wedding. And I just wanted to get all my favorite people together and have a big party, right?
Yeah. All right.
No, but in all seriousness, it's been at retreats and conferences where I have grown myself. I have personally grown, I have professionally grown, and I have made some of the best relationships personally and professionally. And if I can replicate that and provide that for other people, wow, right? And then I specifically feel that when we get people together with a similar passion, with a similar mindset, amazing things happen. So not only am I bringing together practice owners, I'm also bringing together people that would say faith is a part of who they are. And, Gordon, I loved what you said earlier, that it doesn't mean that you have to have a faith-based practice to come, because I totally agree. I mean, I would say the ideal person for this summit, and I think in any event, figuring out your ideal person is number one, what you need to do first. But it's for anyone who would say faith is a part of their life. Specifically, the Christian faith is what we're talking about with this summit. And that's something that they live by, those values, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's all they talk about or that they're putting it in every part of their practice. Definitely not. I like to think of this summit as a business summit with a twist of faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you had a previous conference that I was able to attend and speak at. And that was, the relationships that you forge in those settings is, you make lifelong friends. And I just think, I was just kind of reflecting as you were talking about, the times that have been pivotal changes for me, as far as maybe aha moments or really coming to realizations, have nearly always been in the context of being in a retreat or in a conference setting where you're with people that you aren't normally with every single day, but you forge those kind of intimate relationships and in a sense of being vulnerable with people, and it just brings so much out.
Definitely. And, Gordon, we met on a retreat.
That's right. We did.
That's right. And now look at our relationship.
Yeah.
And now I'm on your podcast again, and I was just thinking about podcasting, even that's just a small one to put in here. But we were just in Louisville, you and I, and a bunch of other amazing people for the Meet You in Kentucky. And I got to hang out with Mike McAllowitz. And then I was like, okay, Mike, will you come on my podcast? And he was like, well, of course. And so now I have him scheduled to come on the podcast. And if I hadn't gone to Louisville, Mike wouldn't be coming on my podcast. And that's just a small example of all the connections that you can make with people and big moves in your business.
Right. And you're exactly right, because the same experience for me both of us being podcasters, I got just a bunch of guests, out of that experience. I mean, some of them don't know they're going to be guests yet, but they are going to be.
That's right.
But and it's through those relationships that we really move ourselves forward. It's also where we take care of ourselves emotionally, spiritually. All of those things, I think, come from events like that.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. I mean, I would say if somebody is thinking about hosting an event, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things we could talk about here. I just think it's really important that you love planning stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we can look at a shiny object and be like, ooh, well, these other people are doing that. I want to do that. And I mean, that's not a bad thing, but planning an event is tons of work. And now I do retreats, and I'll say those are definitely easier to plan.
Right.
Still a lot of work that goes into it, but planning a summit it's a year-long task of marketing and putting it together and having it all set up the right way. In fact, I secured this venue more than a year out from this summit because it was a place I really wanted to be at. And so you just got to make sure that it's something that you really enjoy. So, hey, if you don't like doing that, please don't embark on this, or you just hire somebody to do it for you.
Right. Yeah, it is a lot of work. And I think knowing you, Whitney, as I've gotten to know you over the last few years, it just really energizes you to put all of this together and think about it and pull the people together and all of that sort of thing. It's really, you're really brilliant with it. I'll say that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I mean, one thing that's different this year that I'd never been able to do before is provide CEs through the NBCC.
Yes.
So I'm really excited about that. And so it is kind of fun to bring new ventures to the table as you plan more and more events to, make them better and better. And so I have a whole program for how it's all going to run and QR codes, and, you're going to get everything electronically, which is really nice instead of these handwritten certificates. But if you attend, you can earn up to 13.5 CEs through NBCC.
Awesome. So tell folks a little bit about who's going to be there and the speakers and the venue and all of that kind of thing.
Oh, goodness. I will just tell you this. I feel so honored by the caliber of people that agreed to speak at this summit. Like, it makes me seem a lot better than I am. I'm really honored. I'm honored by the sponsors as well. I'm pulling up my website here because I want to make sure that I hit all the highlights. So my keynote speakers this year are Katie Reed, William Hemphill, and Ernesto, and then myself. It's funny when you say Ernesto, you feel like you don't even have to say his last name.
Yeah, that's right.
Segismundo, just because it's fun to say.
Yes.
So all of them will be keynotes. Ernesto's going to talk about money mindset. William's going to be talking about imposter syndrome. And Katie's going to be talking about growing yourself to grow your clients. I also am going to be a keynote. I'm going to talk about having a faith-based practice in a divided world. Because, boy, that's definitely what we've been dealing with lately.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Some of the other speakers, I have Tressa Damas, who actually is a master's of divinity and owns a practice. I have Laura Long, your badass therapy practice. Roma Williams, Desiree Vegaras, and then Jessica Tapana from Simplified SEO, Stephanie Corpel, Chris Thayer. I have Katie Vernoy. I'm really excited to meet her in person. Natalie Edmond, she's going to be talking about having an anti-racist practice. And then, of course, our good friend Uriah Guilford. He'll be talking about having a productive practice. So I feel like we've got a good lineup of speakers for this event.
Right. And I'm looking forward to being there just as a participant. And also the podcast network that Whitney and I are both in, the Sightcraft Network, is one of the sponsors of the summit. So that's going to be exciting and fun. So
definitely.
Yeah. So tell folks about the venue, because I'm excited about that. It's a beautiful place. Yeah,
definitely. So it's the Alita Hotel, which is actually a part of Marriott. It's not a technical Marriott, but it's like a boutique hotel that they have. So you'll be able to get your Marriott Bonvoy points or use your points. Thankfully, I have a discount code. So once people register, don't be alarmed by the room rate online, because it's going to be at least half that when you register for the event, because this hotel is really nice. It's right on River Street. And so River Street in Savannah is right along the Savannah River. You can watch the boats come through. There's tons of shopping, restaurants. There's a party scene down there if you're into that and you want to do that in the evenings. So there's just a lot of things that you can walk to, be close to. This hotel, I've actually been there multiple times, of course, and it has like this 1950s, 60s vibe to it, like kind of vintage. And then they're all about conserving things. So when you get there, they actually give you your own water bottle. And all the floors have water stations and ice stations where you can fill up your bottles, which I think is really neat. The food is excellent. It's Southern. And I actually got to do a food tasting a few months ago, really. And so it's going to be Southern food, fried chicken, fried green tomatoes. And so you will get 3 meals by attending the summit. So those are all included. And the first night, we're going to have an opening night. It's going to be on the rooftop. You're going to have a great view of the river, drinks included, and amazing food. So you can't beat all those things.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun event. And it's a beautiful time of year too for Savannah in October. It's cooled off enough then, I hope, to
Yes, definitely. And Savannah's a fun place to visit. It's very historic. In fact, I am a Methodist, and John Wesley came here, if you know Methodism. And most people think that John Wesley had a really positive experience in Savannah. He actually did not. And my husband does walking tours for groups when they come into Savannah on John Wesley and takes them to the different places. And so if people are interested, they'll be able to sign up for a John Wesley walking tour while they're at the summit.
That's cool. That's cool. And, having been in Savannah myself, there's the history is just incredible, but it's got this feel of just colonial kind of vibe and just really all the positive things of Southern charm that we think about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wanted to go back there. We were talking about being a sponsor, and I partner with people that I think are wonderful, and I think their businesses are truly helpful. Like, I'm not going to have sponsors that I don't think are really going to help people. And so we have a really good group of sponsors, and they're going to be offering special deals and offers just for people at the summit. And so Sightcraft Network is a huge one, because I wouldn't be where I am today without that network. And so I feel really grateful for that. But if you go to WhitneyOwens.com, you can click on Summit and see all the sponsors there on the page. They're all fabulous, and looking forward to seeing them. Some of these people I've never met in person, and I've used their services in my own business. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Right. Oh, that's great. So yes, and we'll be sure to have links in the show notes and the show summary. And also I'm going to create a link that'll just be practiceoftherapy.com/wise practice summit. I don't think that'll be too terribly long, but that'll get you to where we're going. And
love it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, Whitney, what else would you want people to know that you feel is important?
Yes. So there are a lot of things out there looking for your attention. I mean, there are tons of retreats. There are tons of conferences out there. And I just want to make it clear that this event was created specifically for people who are faith-based and people who make that a part of their lives and some a part of their business. And so this event has really been tailored. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things out there that you could do, but if you would say that's who you are, I really don't want you to miss out on this opportunity and the opportunity to meet other people who have a similar mindset and similar ideas about growing their business. Like, it's really a special thing. So it's really about growing your business, but it's also really just about the connections and about actually growing your faith at the same time. Like, I have found that my business grows my faith and who I am. And so I want to give people that same experience. So this has really been tailored for you.
Right. And, I think the thing about it is business owners, particularly in all of us, most of the people I'm assuming that listen to this particular podcast are in private practice in some form or fashion, or thinking about being in private practice. One of the things that's just crucial is having that integration of work-life balance and being able to take your own values and insert it in your business and be able to have your business match up with what you experience internally.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, well, I'm excited about this, and folks, be sure and check it out. Again, we'll have links in the show notes and show summary for you to get to it easily. And Whitney will be back again, I know for sure. Well, again, a big thanks to Whitney for joining me again on the podcast and for just being a good friend. As you might have gathered, Whitney and I kind of go back a ways, and we've been working on a lot of things together and collaborated on a lot of things. Whitney and I are in a mastermind group together along with Uriah Guilford and Jessica Tapana. Uriah's got the Productive Therapist podcast, and Jessica is the owner of Simplified SEO. So quick shout out to both of them and the work they're doing. We're a good group of friends, and I'm really thankful and grateful to them for being part of my life and including me in their little group. So, it's a wonderful group, and I would encourage you just along those lines to find people that you can be in community with and support each other along the way, particularly in this whole mental health entrepreneurial space. It can be lonely, and I think it's good to have trusted friends and colleagues where we can support each other and be brutally honest with each other and be vulnerable with. It's made a huge difference in my life, and I'm so grateful to them for being part of my journey with all of these things. Also, before we be sure and check out the Wise Practice Summit that's coming up, and you'll find links here in the show notes and the show summary. And I don't know if we mentioned the dates of that, but it's going to be October 5th through 7th. And as Whitney mentioned, it's in Savannah, Georgia. And if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com/Wise Practice Summit, that'll get you to the landing page for the summit. And I hope to see you there. And I would encourage you to go ahead and buy a ticket. The number of seats, Whitney's intentionally keeping the summit smaller, so go ahead and get a ticket now before they run out, and look forward to seeing you there. And again, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and I'm always impressed with all the features and things that they keep adding and the support they provide. It's really second to none, and my practice could not operate without them. So be sure to check them out, and you can go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and use the coupon code Gordon to try them out for 2 months for free. And finally, be sure and check out the podcasting workshop. And this is going to be an email workshop. You'll get a short videos delivered to your inbox, and we'll teach you the steps that you need to have to start your own podcast. And if you're interested in podcasting, I'd love for you to reach out for me, but also sign up for this free workshop that you can go through and learn all the steps and learn what you need to do to start a podcast. So take care, folks. Look forward to being with you next week. I've got a lot of great guests lined up. In fact, my schedule's pretty full with podcasts at this point. So take care, folks, and have a great rest of your week or weekend. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.